Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome out to another episode of the show. My name is Shane Larson. Excited to be here with you. I'm interviewing a college quarterback right now, who I actually spoke to back when he was in high school. And that was for a different show that I was doing, but it was also for the same company that's the sponsor of today's episode, which is Nation's Best Football. Shout out to Nation's Best. Make sure to go follow them on Instagram. They're helping provide so much exposure for the youth, high school, college, and professional football players all around the country. So make sure to follow Nation's Best. But this episode is special because we get to talk to this guy who I spoke to when he was in high school, and now it's 2023, and he's been playing college football for a few years now and has so much more insight to provide in regards to, the ins and outs of college football, which you can expect, the leadership skill sets that he's acquired, some of the players he's played alongside and the lessons that he's learned from them, and how to be a leader, how to face adversity, how to go through that. He also talks about his family and the support system that he has, which will be a good reminder for any of us parents that have athletes, that are, kids that are athletes, and we want to support them because his parents have been a massive influence for him and a good example for him. And this is going to be a really insightful one. So if you're an athlete, if you're a parent, if you're a coach, please take some notes, get ready for this one. This is the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Game Time Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everyone? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. My name is Shane Larson, host of the show. We are into year number 8. We finished 7 years of this show, established in 2017, and we are continuing on as we interview sports figures on a weekly basis, get to learn from them, and just hear their stories. I believe there's a lot of power in storytelling, and I believe a lot of people can learn from other people's stories and their journeys and everything, and that's the whole reason I put out this platform 7-8 years ago, whatever it is, 2017, so almost 8 years total. So here we are. Here's a special moment for me. I get to be on our guest, who I actually spoke to it was a different podcast that I was running, but it was for the same guy that I'm partnered with for Nation's Best Football. And man, it's weird to see a couple years later, we're into the college football scene, and you've had quite the experience in the last couple of years. A quarterback here. His name's CJ Montes, and we're going to get to learn from him. So, CJ, thanks for joining the show, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So let's dissect a few things real quick. So tell the listeners, a little bit about your high school experience, where you went to high school at, what that was like for you. Before we even get into the college discussion, where were you at high school, and what was your high school experience like?
I ended up finishing high school at Paraclete, which is in Lancaster in California. But I bounced around a couple high schools just because back and forth between parents and whatnot. But I was like a challenge for me, just going to different high schools and trying to learn different playbooks. But I feel like it helped me out in the end, just because, learning different playbooks and getting a short amount of time to learn them helped me, I feel like, just excel in football. But yeah, I finished out at Paraclete High School with Dean Harrington, one of the best California coaches. If you ask about him in California, most everybody knows him. So it was just a great experience in different high schools and finishing at Paraclete.
Man, that's an interesting point that I'm glad you shared that, because I want to ask you, you kind of alluded to it already, learning a new playbook, learning a new system, change of scenery. A lot of athletes, that can be scary, learning a new system, because you're comfortable in one system and then you go to another. Do you have any advice, CJ, on maybe like if you're learning a new playbook and you're learning a new system, getting used to the new personalities and leadership, how to best go about that?
I really just say spending time with your coach and the guys that have already been there long enough to where they know it like the back of their hand. You want to get with them, because you can only learn so much from trying to do it yourself. But just going out there and experiencing it for yourself, going through the plays live, at practice, on the board, looking at them on your binder, just really spending time and looking at it and going over it with your guys.
Totally. Appreciate that. And from the recruiting side of things, I want to know, from your perspective on the recruiting side of things. Obviously, there's been a change of scenery in the college game too, but I want to know, as you were getting done with your high school and you're trying to figure out what your next steps were for college, what was the recruiting process like for you, and what advice would you give to the athletes that are in that same position, trying to figure out what school they want to go to, trying to find a fit that's going to be good for them?
My recruiting process was a little different due to COVID. So I actually didn't get a senior season. So they based my film off pretty much my junior year and then my years before that. But really, I would just say go to a college that wants you. You know, you may want to go to a lot of colleges, but that specific college may not want you. Really, the college that reached the most and really wants you for you. That's number one. I would say number two is go to a college you can enjoy outside of football, because football is only a couple months, and then outside of that is just school. And you still have practice and lift and whatnot, but you still want to enjoy yourself, enjoy the people around you outside of football, because that makes it a lot easier than being somewhere you don't want to be and you're just there for football. So that'd really be my advice.
That's huge, and I appreciate that too. So could you let the listeners know like where you initially went right out of high school, so they kind of see, you know, the path that you took, CJ, as we get to kind of where you're at right now?
I had originally committed at the U in New Mexico in Albuquerque, and then did my 2 years there, and then I hopped in the transfer portal, and now I'm at Fordham University in New York, the Bronx. A lot of people get that confused with Florida, but it's Fordham in New York.
So you spent some time over here in the West. You're in the California area for high school. You go to New Mexico, but now you're in New York. So I want to know about the cultural differences from like maybe New Mexico over to New York. Was there any kind of a transition there, not just from a football standpoint, but from like just like a different way of living?
I'll say, well, first of all, I never pictured myself ending up on the East Coast, but culture wise, it's nothing too crazy. You know, you just your simple bacon, egg, and cheese from the delis and listen to people talk how they talk on the East Coast. But right now, it's nothing crazy. I enjoyed out here. It's a great scenery from being from the West Coast and coming out here and experiencing new things in new places, really. So.
No, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. You know, obviously it didn't work out for you at the first school. As far as like it didn't work out for you in the sense of like where you wanted to necessarily like continue on with your career. So that's why, you know, you hit the transfer portal, you do your thing. But I would like to ask you, CJ, is there something that you could share with us that you did learn that you took away from your experience at New Mexico the first, you know, go around before you hit the transfer portal and went out to Fordham? Like what's maybe something that you took away from there that was a positive?
My positive from New Mexico is really always stay ready, because you never know. They always say, oh, one play, all it takes is one play, and truly what it came to. Quarterbacks are getting hurt back to back at New Mexico, and before you know it's my time to go out there and play on the field. So really, I would just tell everybody who's watching and who's going to watch this is always stay ready, because you never know. And my dad always told me, prepare like you're the starter, for that reason, because you never know. And if you ask anybody, they know I always prepare like I'm the starter. I practice like I'm second, even if I am the starter, because you never know who's coming for your spot, and all it takes is one play, and you could be out there on that field. So that's really my positive.
Man. I like that. I appreciate you sharing that too. So your experience over at Fordham, talk about the difference, you know, in the game. Is there a difference in the speed of the game or anything of that nature? And how has the overall experience been for you, you know, since landing out there in New York?
I really think it's the same. I don't think there's a big difference from FBS to FCS level at all. We still come out here, still playing against guys that, you know, who are good at football. You know, there's no like, oh, we're junior B guys. No, it's everybody's good. They're still in college. It's still D1. Difference wise, I would maybe say O-line, D-line, but then again, it's still like they're still big guys and they protect me and do all they do. So I don't really think there's a huge difference.
No, that's cool to hear it from someone like yourself, because you know the quarterback that we all keep hearing about is, you know, Dion's boy, and he was talking about the FCS compared to the, you know, FBS level, and you know, not a big difference in regards like it's kind of similar. There's a lot of athletes out on the field either way. I mean, there might be a few more athletes at the FBS level, but it's like not everyone's going to go to the league. You know what I mean? And it's something similar that it's like they're all good athletes, but they're not all going to go to the NFL. So it's kind of similar in that regard. So I'm glad you said that. Now, walk us through a day in the life of an athlete like yourself, CJ. Like, what is a typical day during season and during school? Like, I mean, I want to let the younger athletes know that are in high school, like they can expect to be, going on as a collegiate athlete.
All right. So I'll walk you through a regular Tuesday. We have 6 a.m. lift. So you got to be there probably 30 or even earlier if you want to get a meal in, weigh in, lift for an hour, take a shower. We got to go to breakfast check, make sure everybody eats breakfast because maintaining weight is a big thing during the season. Then I usually have about 2 classes that my last end around 12:45. I usually eat lunch before practice or before our meetings, which start up around like 2:15. Go there, we meet, we go over what we're going to practice or what the game plan is for that week and who we're playing. We practice from 3 to 5, and then I usually have a night class after that. So that's just a normal Tuesday. And that night class will end about 9:15, and then go to sleep after that because there's no hanging out after that. No, sir.
Oh, man. So you did mention that. That's actually really good to know. And I'm glad you said that because I want to reiterate. So if you're an athlete listening to this podcast right now, or you're watching the podcast, wherever, if it's on YouTube, if you're listening to it on the audio side, take note of what CJ just said there. Like, just understand that a day is going to be pretty busy for you in different ways. You're going to have school. You're going to have your sport. You're going to have school. You're going to have your sport. You're going to have school. And then you're going to have to go to bed. And you're going to have to prioritize time for your homework. Like, there's not a lot of time. Shouldn't be like, you got to prioritize your time better, right? Like, just make sure that you're doing the right things and being there and being focused. And that's hard to do, is to stay like locked in all day, every day to try to do your thing. But I would like to ask you then, CJ, how do you stay out of trouble? Because you did mention, you want to go somewhere that's fun outside of just football too. Like, there's things to do and whatnot, but how do you make sure that you have fun, you enjoy yourself as a college student and a college kid, but staying out of trouble so that you're still eligible to compete at your sport? You know what I mean?
Right. Staying out of trouble is honestly not too hard. If you're looking to find trouble, you will find it, especially out here in the Bronx. But if you're around with your guys, usually if we go out or do anything, we're always with teammates. There's no, you're going out by yourself. We don't do any of that. So usually if you're with teammates, we all have each other's backs. We're going to look out for each other. So we wouldn't let anything happen. Even if somebody is trying to make a dumb decision, we're on top of that. But being the quarterback is obviously I can't do any of that. So I usually stay on top of the guys. It's like if it's looking a little, unsure or any like weird feeling, I usually tell them like, let's get out of here. Let's go back home. So it's really not that hard to stay out of trouble.
I like that you're a leader on and off the field, right? So that's good. You got to kind of sense that, like, you just keep them out of trouble. And as the quarterback, you got to make the call. I do want to know, like, I guess you probably couldn't say a play, but like you talked about playbooks in high school and just learning those. Like, what was the difference? Was there a shift in terminology and playbooks in college too, coming from like New Mexico over to Fordham and like maybe you can't say a full play, but like, was it the terminology? Was it different when you're coming over to school?
I would just say the terminology is different, but usually any West Coast offense, they're all kind of same, pretty much the same concepts. Maybe they might try to teach it different. But just terminology, getting to learn new names of the plays and how they recite it, and that's really it.
Okay, that was it. Okay, cool. So now I want to ask you about your leadership, your leadership skills. How do you feel that you matured as a quarterback? The quarterback is like the guy. I always talk to my basketball players that I coach. Like, it's kind of like whoever's the leader, whether it's the point guard or whomever, has to stay neutral as far as their emotion, like good, bad, and different. Like, you got to be able, when the storm's hitting, you got to be able to, weather that, because your guys are going to follow, right? As a quarterback, you get in the huddle, they're going to look into your eyes, especially when the adversity's hitting. They're going to kind of like, they're looking to their leader. If they see that you're kind of nervous in your eyes, they're too going to fall eventually. So I want to ask you, how do you feel like you've matured as a quarterback in the last couple of years, especially at the collegiate level?
Right. I would like to give big shout out to Terry Wilson and Isaiah Chavez and Miles Kendrick who were at New Mexico while I was there. Just older guys as I was younger, and just watching them, how they led, whether it was vocal or through example, just doing it. They taught me a lot, just being young, just watching them, because now I feel like I could kind of know what to do as they were QB1 and I was watching. I know what and what not to do just through their experience. And really, I've always been a calm guy, never really like no anger issues, no nothing. So usually when I'm on the field, rather interception, which I only had one, and bounce back from that real quick. But interception, incomplete pass, or play just didn't go my way. I never complain. I'm not yelling at anybody, not yelling at the receiver. I'm really just a real calm guy. If anything, I'm always uplifting guys, even if they drop the ball or anything, So that's really it. Just staying calm no matter the situation.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I read a book and I had this guy on my show a couple years back before he passed away. His name was David Moad, and Trevor Moad, not David. Trevor was the mental consultant for Russell Wilson. So he's the mental coach for Russell Wilson, the quarterback for now the Denver Broncos. But he was talking about, so Trevor always taught how to think neutrally, and it's huge for quarterbacks. Like think neutrally, like always just, it's not always like it's being present. So it's not always like, you throw an interception, it's acknowledging it for what it is. I threw a pick. But it's not even looking to the next play necessarily. It's like, okay, I threw a pick, so now let's focus on this particular moment right now to get back. Like I got to figure out what I got to do this moment. You're not thinking too far in the future. You're not thinking in the past. You acknowledge the past, stay neutral, and basically the reason for that is because as an athlete, if you stay neutral, kind of like what you're saying, you don't get mad at people, just stay neutral. People follow that. It's like remember the Titans line where it's like attitude reflects leadership cap. So they're all going to follow the leadership. So it's cool to hear. And I hope others are taking note of this. Is the whole point of the podcast is let these athletes take note of what like people like yourself are telling them. Like, what are you doing to help them? So, talk to us about a memory, CJ. This last season, is there a favorite memory that you had, a favorite game that you've had so far in your time over there, at least this last season, that you could share? What was it?
I would just say beating Buffalo. That was our FBS game of the year. It was just a lot of adversity that we had to face as a team, and we got together and we did the job, got the job done. Big game for the offense, big game for the defense. We just came together and we won. It was the first FBS win in a while, so it made history, and it was a wild night.
Sir, that's cool, man. That's cool. Is there a team? You just mentioned a couple of people that were influences to you as far as leadership is concerned. Is there any mentors, like a coach that you could talk about, whether it was in high school, at Mexico, here, a coach that stands out to you as far as a mentor or a leader and what's something that they've taught you?
I would really say my mentor-wise, I would just go with my dad. After every game, before every game, fall camp, anything I'm going through, he always reaches out to me, make sure I'm all right, give me the talks that I need just to stay locked for camp, and just tell me that I really need to get the job done. He stays on top of me. I love it. It's just, what dad do. But coaching, Coach Conlon, the head coach up here, he's just a great coach, great dad too. So just that, usually he says stuff about being a great dad, and I like that because football's not everything. At the end of the day, football will come to an end. So just being a great dad and listening to him and what he does with his kids, I think is great.
Oh, that's super cool. Hey, shout out to your dad too, and your coach. I think that's really cool. I just a memory pop up on my social media yesterday from something that had happened almost a decade ago, and it was a memory with my dad for showing up for me when I needed it the most in my life when I was in my mid-20s. But yeah, shout out to your dad, dude. Dads and any mentor for that matter that show up for their kids in various ways. Obviously, I think that's a missing part of society, the missing piece in society today, which is being shown more and more. If you look around, like, yeah, they're missing some leadership, especially like male figures in their lives. And so it's cool that your dad still does that, he holds you accountable, one, but they also be checking in on you to make sure everything's good, Do your parents get to come over? Does your dad get to come out to New York at all? Or is that hard on opposite sides of the country?
They show up to every game. So it's really appreciated. I had a coach come up to me, he's like, wow, your parents come to every game. And I'm like, yeah. And he just said, that's a real dedication of parents right there, because I know it's hard to do, especially being from California to New York while they work during the week as well. So it's just a lot of dedication they put into me, and it shows me how much love they have for me. So,
yo, dude, shout out to whatever airline they're going on. Frequent flyer miles probably got some going on. Dude, that's dope. Awesome. Shout out to your fan, man. That's super, super cool. So CJ, I just want to ask you, you're a collegiate athlete, and recently within the last it's only been 2.5 years since name, image, and likeness has become a thing that the collegiate athletes are able to leverage. I'm curious if you're able to, if you're doing anything currently for NIL for yourself as far as branding or anything of that nature, and what your opinion is on NIL being a current collegiate athlete during the time that actually was, I wouldn't hate using the word legalized. I guess the word would be just like, it's allowed now, I guess, is what it
Right.
is. So I'm
Yeah.
just on it all.
Personally, I haven't had anything money wise. I've had sides, they candy. I had PSD send me their apparel for a little bit, but nothing big money or any money at all as of that fact. But my thoughts on NIL, I think it's cool. I do think it kind of messes with the NFL a little bit because you got the top players in collegiate football not wanting to go to the draft because they think they could get more money now. But I mean, rather than that, I think it's a cool way for college athletes to get their money and get their name out there and brand themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Like I can only speak from my perspective as a 35-year-old now, like former athlete, but I'm old. But if I were, I'm telling you, man, if I'm in your position, I'm 100% starting a podcast or a YouTube channel, and I'm talking about my day-to-day experience as a collegiate athlete, man. I think as a consumer, as somebody who listens to sports media, I would love to hear that, man. I'd love to hear CJ Montes and his podcast and like hear his day-to-day stuff of what's going on in the life of CJ. Like, I think it'd be so cool. And the fact that they allow that now is at least giving the opportunity. I think it's cool, right? But I do think there's some downsides to it too. There's some things that you just mentioned right there that people don't like. The general fan base isn't really looking at. Like, I'm a Buckeyes fan, and we've got Marvin Harrison Jr. potentially looking at coming back to Ohio State rather than going as a first top pick in the NFL draft next year. It's just because of the amount of money that's being spoken about. Like, he could potentially make a lot of money. Now, it's not for sure a deal, but the fact that they can even talk about that as a collegiate athlete is wild to me.
It's crazy.
So yeah, it's messed with a couple things. Sorry. Okay. I had to drink something. All right. So I do have a question for you. So what's the plans going into off season and moving forward? How much time you got left, CJ? That's what I'm trying to see. Like, what's the plans for CJ Montes in the football realm?
I still have 2 more years left, so any type of draft or pro day, that's way too far to even speak about. But really, I graduate next year, so it'll be big for me and my family. But just go into the off season, get ready for spring ball, develop more, and just keep getting better at my craft and better for my guys.
No, I love that. I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what you do. I want to ask you, as a quarterback, we got a lot of quarterbacks here locally in Idaho. They do a lot of training. There's some specialized trainers, but as far as like the weight room and skill set in the off season, how important is the weight room for a quarterback? Do you find it's been helpful for you to build muscle in different areas, or is it more the skills training that you need to know as far as technique? What do you feel has been the most beneficial for you in your off season training over the last couple of years?
It's both. My dad's a trainer, so all the weight room stuff, he handles that. And then I go to my coach, Anton Clarkson, at home in California. He works on my craft there. So I think just really they're both important. There's not, and especially for quarterbacks, because you want to break the stereotype of, oh, quarterbacks don't lift, this and that. But you definitely want to break the stereotype, especially to your guys. Like, if the guys see you lifting hard, they're going to lift hard just because, oh, that's the quarterback. He can't be lifting more than me. So you kind of just want to accomplish thing, especially in the weight room.
No, I dig that. So with that being said, how much are you squatting and benching right now, man?
Well, we haven't maxed out in a while, so I couldn't even tell you numbers right now.
Yeah, I feel you, dude. That's cool. No, that's cool. He's just trying to be humble. He doesn't want to tell it, so his offensive line doesn't say, "Oh, you my QB." He's squatting to me. But that's cool, dude. That's cool. So going into the offseason, I do want to ask you about in-season, injury prevention and just trying to stay mobile. You mentioned you have a lot of calories to keep maintaining weight during season. But I want to talk to you about just like your recovery after games and after stuff. Like, do you guys have a process at your school, or do you have a personal, like, thing, having been around your dad and your other trainers back home? Like, is there a way that you do recovery to help you continuously have injury prevention, or at least, the best that you possibly can, try to recover as fast as you can?
I'm always in contact with my dad and my doctors from home, and then the trainers here as well. So whether it's cold tubs, normative boot, or just stretching, and then we usually do a light lift after the game on Sunday. So just everything combined and working with everybody that I know, keep contact with, and the trainers here. I think that's pretty much how I stay injury free.
Cool, man. That's awesome. So I would just say to all the listeners, what you just got there from DJ on that one is be informed, like where your resources are at, and be resourceful. Like if you've got a family or a friend, stay in contact with them to see what's best for recovery. But I do believe I'm a big believer in recovery. If you want to, be able to play at the top of your game, be ready for practices and go all like you got to be able to stay healthy. It's a big deal in athletics. Like you might be one of the best athletes, but if you can't stay healthy, you can't be on the field or the court or whatever it might be, then you're no good to the team. So you got to stay healthy so you can be out there and competing. Otherwise, a coach is going to be like, well, what good is that athlete? So you got to recover. 2 questions left for you, CJ, that I've had on my mind as we wrap up the interview. We talked about coaches and mentors. You've referenced other teammates, but who is your favorite? Well, this is going to be that's hard. Who is an influential teammate that you've had, and what did they teach you? Like, what was one of the most influential teammates that you've had in your career? That dates all the way back to the Pee Wee leagues, man, and all the way up till now.
Pee Wee leagues.
It goes all the way back. So whatever, maybe that's this year, maybe that's when you were 10. I don't know, but who's someone who's been an influential teammate, and what did they do to influence you?
I really just go to college at New Mexico my freshman year. Isaiah Chavez, quarterback, took me under his wing when I got there, whether it was me asking him to watch film or go over plays. And, he just really taught me what I should be watching on film, how to watch it, how to break down the playbook. Really, he's just a great guy. I would have to say he's probably the most influential teammate that I had growing up in college. So that's my guy.
Yeah, shout out to him. I love that you mentioned film. Like that's a big deal. Like if you're a leader now, you can pass that on to the quarterbacks coming up. Like share with them how to watch film. What are you watching for film? A lot of these athletes, they hear about it in high school. They'll watch huddle stuff. Like their coach will send them a bunch of huddle clips and they'll watch them, and that's their film study. But like they really don't know what they're watching. And then they have a hard transition. I've talked to athletes all across the board, CJ. They get into college, they have no idea how to watch film. They don't even know what they're looking for. That's a big struggle for them because the ones who do understand it start to pick it up a little bit better because they visualize things on the field and so forth. So I'm glad that you mentioned that and like something he passed on to you.
Yes,
I also think it's cool that you just said that because when I interviewed Jerry Stackhouse, who was a former NBA basketball player, Jerry told me something when I asked, he said, what do you do with like the younger guys that are coming for your position? Like you're a veteran in the league and guys get drafted and they're in your position. But how do you give advice without like wanting, how do you give that advice knowing that it's your job? And he said, I just have that confidence. They're not as good at what I do anyway. They can't do what I can do anyway. So why not give them all the advice and all the stuff? Because I'm still a competitor. I'm still going to do better than them anyway. And so I just think it's cool that you were sharing about the quarterback who shares that with you. You can now share it with other people and not be scared because competition's part of it. And you kind of just, you have that confidence once you've built that up. That's something that came to my mind that I don't think people should shy away from sharing the insight, the tips and tricks for these younger guys coming up, even if it's a guy in your position, because you should be good enough to where they can do what you can do anyway. All right. Exactly. So the last question for you, CJ, as we get ready to wrap this one up is just up until this point, I know you got 2 years of eligibility left. There's a lot of football left to be played, but up until this point, what is the biggest life lesson that football taught you?
Always battle through adversity, no matter what's going on. Just keep going. That's really it. I broke my hand at University of New Mexico, but really the one that not got to me, but really had me facing a tough adversity was my first collegiate start against Colorado State while I was at the University of New Mexico. Probably the worst game I ever played in my life. Worse than Pee Wee, worse than anything. But, that next week, people asked me, like, are you okay? Like, how are you still able to, like, fight through that and come to practice normal? And it's really, like, in the past, there's nothing you could do about it. I don't dwell on the past or look what's coming in the future. I just try to focus on what's present and watch the film and what can I do better? What can I get better at so I don't make those same mistakes later on in life, later on in practice, later on in games. And that's just helped to get to where I'm at now.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. They always say, like, if you're good at what you do, you're bound to have a bad game. Not everybody has a great game every game. You're bound to have a bad game or more, but just don't let the mistake spiral into 2, 3, 4, 5 mistakes. When it goes like, don't let a bad game spiral into 2, 3, 4, 5 bad games. And I think that's awesome. It kind of goes along with what you just said right there. You're able to battle through adversity. It's taught you that, and you're able to utilize that. That's going to be a skill set you'll leverage for the rest of your life. After football's done one day, whatever that may be, it could be 10 years down the road, who knows? But whenever that's done, that's a skill set you're going to have, because life's going to slap you in the face sometimes. You know
Yes,
that? Like,
sir.
you're going to have to battle back through it and just be able to focus. So I appreciate your time, CJ. Where can we follow you, the listeners on here? Where can we follow you so we can just see, keep updated on your journey?
Instagram is cj.montes, and that's Montes, and then 12 on Instagram. Twitter is cjmontes12, and that's pretty much all I'm active on. So that's it.
Cool. Okay, so your Instagram, your Twitter, we're going to put that here in the description of the podcast. So those who are listening, whether you're on YouTube or if you're on the audio side, just check the description here on whatever device you're on, and you have the links to CJ's pages. We're looking forward to rooting for you, man. And again, I just appreciate your time and joining us, man. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, brother. Take care.
Yes, sir.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.